Alright, Chapter 4 of the Federal Railroad Administration Electrically Controlled Pneumatic Brake System for Freight Service, Section 4, Electrically Controlled Pneumatic Implementation Alternatives. The adverse statement of the work assignment with the call for the alternative of implementing electrically controlled pneumatic brake technology, U.S. freight railroad industry based Booz Allen analysis. Work expert panel with the following three discrete feasible alternatives available for the advanced staff of the electrically controlled pneumatic brake system with industries. Alright, based on the FRA statement of the work agreement, it's called the three alternative implementing engineering controlling program, electrically controlled pneumatic brake technology, U.S. freight railroad industry, based on the Booz analysis analyst for the work with the expert panel with the following description of the feasible alternative available, the advance for the staff of the electrically controlled pneumatic brake system within the industry, the PRB-based implementation plan, one railroad implementation plan, new equipment implementation plan. Each of these plans is reviewed in detail below. The PRB implementation plan implemented, as noted earlier, the economically rational approach to the electrically controlled pneumatic integration is tailored with the initial installation freight serve with the potential benefit the most likely to achieve the implementation cost of the very practical integration plan of the B fashion. Booz and Allen believe that the PRB with the cold moon with the best meet with the critical mean because they possess each of the following characteristics: heavy haulage, heavy haul, heavy high mileage use of freight cars that remain together, dedicated with the train set, the concentrated with the selected rail corridors, account a significant percentage of the rail traffic that have relatively few stakeholders participating in the movements. The stakeholders familiar with the interest of the engineering, electrically controlled pneumatic issues. Carry of the PRB load to excess of the 100 tons, travel the average of 1,100 miles by, with the utility of the train sets human to circulate with the continuously with the coal gondolas averaging in excess of 60,000 miles per year. Highest of any of the bulk car type. Some 322 million tons of the PRB coal moved with the 2004 over the 95-mile BNSF UP joint line in Wyoming, accounting for 130 trains per day loaded and emptied. Another 80 million tons of moved to the BNSF northern quarter out of the PRB. Energy Information Administrative of the U.S. Department of Energy estimated the value of the PRB coal could be doubled by the year of the 2025, assuming the railroads can create the capacity to handle it. PRB coal represented the estimated 20% of the total cost. Last one revenue total ton miles of 2004, more than a quarter of the rail track. Transports are often utilized themselves over the lease of the utilities major equipment from the financial owner of the GE Rail Services. Many of the stakeholders involved with the movement of the PRB coal filed with the electrically controlled pneumatic development attended one or more of the following meetings with the expert panel with both railroads of the ENS and Southern Company for the initiated experiment with the electrically controlled pneumatic technology. Also collaborated rail-related study with the electrically controlled pneumatic offers significant benefits over the wheel life with given the sheer operation scale, stakeholder technology awareness of the PRB coal traffic. The following the electrically controlled pneumatic implementation has both economical and practical sense. There's currently estimated 2,800 locomotives with the 600 train sets dedicated to the movement of the PRB coal. Thus, less than 10% of the industry locomotive roster, less than 6% of the freight over the car fleet generated 20% physical activity measured revenue in tons of miles. The leverage equipment and output with the most promising entry point with electrically controlled pneumatic implementation. One could envision other type of services of the meet with the character of the discussed above with the human, the train, grain traffic, the west coast, the intermodal movement. Of these services have operating with the commercial complexity beyond with the PRB coal, which make them better intermediate stage conversion candidates than the first tier ones. For example, the grain train operators involved with the extent of the unit of the train elevator gathering network. Geographically dispersed with the southern Powder River Basin with the coal mining area with the grain tends with more moved over the marketplace rather than through out of the year with the utility coal with the intermediate with traffic, particularly with the signal larger flow with the implement containers over the west of the coast, the more complexity of the complex of the PRB basin, the Powder River Basin, the coal, numerous third-party logistic providers involved with the movement, hence more parties with the bringing of the table to discuss the dynamics of electrical control pneumatic perversion. Significant Powder River Basin experience with electrically controlled pneumatic operation. The revenue shift with the wood blade with the should held foundation conversion with electrically controlled pneumatic brake system, the grain and intermediate module arenas. particularly on congested the mainline corridor of the Powder River Basin coal move with the complete track space and with the other unit train operation to aggregate units over the all tribes over the account with almost 2/5 of all of the Class 1 car miles will be a focus second stage of the conversion of electrically controlled pneumatic brake system. Each quantifiable benefits considered within Section 3.4 through 3.9 and factored into the analysis of the results become even more significant in Table 4.1. One-time conversion enabled the Powder River Basin fleets 2,800 locomotives, 80,000 freight cars to be a total of 432 million annual benefit of fuel, wheel brake inspection, brake shoe, saving the approximately 170 million with the assumption of the powder base ribbon the coal 26% share total revenue tons a mile good proximity shares with the total cost one saving such benefits. Shows locomotive conversions 112 million, freight car conversion 320 million, fuel savings 78, reduced oil defects 745, brake shoe inspection savings 45, brake shoe savings 2%, total $2 million. Even in the entire 432 billion, with the conversion of the cost was sustained with the first year of the implementation, possible result of the standpoint physical conversion capacity with a payback period less than 3 years. The internal rate of the rate with the returning equals to 40% of the measured of 15-year life. Max Bose and Allen conducted with more detail with the risk-adjusted analysis for the alternative of the value metered methodology, which is assumed to be the 3-year equipment conversion period. They were resolved to contain the pendency of the indicated even with the highest of 3 discount rates, payback period of 3 years, and internal IRR at 47%, and NPV almost 700 million. An effective conversion Powder River Basin coal for the electrically controlled pneumatic brake technology showcased the conversion not only because of the significant size of the period, but the significant sound, but also because it involves all 5 stakeholder groups and create the railroad operating benefit the decision with the primary area of the railroad for the vital national energy generation successfully implement plan electrically controlled pneumatic brake technology Powder River Basin coal for the would create with a model conversion with the next set of major services such as intermediate auto unit train grain. Alright, 4.2, the One Railroad Implementation Plan. The second implementation, all the terms scaled down, reduce the risk aversion. The first primary difference between it and the first plans are related. It would be limited to one railroad, reduce the initial conversion complications. Having more than one road interline movements involved with the potential risk of electrically controlled pneumatic locomotive availability problems. It will be converted with the railroad-owned freight car with the remove the issue with the associated with the potential conversion cost share with between the road and prior cars. Both element view for the implementation alternative should only be undertaken with the Powder River Basin implementation found with it be ambiguous for initial conversions and the essence of the One Railroad implementation as well in Class 1 Railroad working closely with the 3 of the other stakeholders, AAR, FRA, and brake suppliers. Further test and validate with the cost of the benefit of the electrically controlled pneumatic technology, larger set of the control signal with revenue line revenue measurements for the conducted data with the various experiments of U.S. class is the principal advantage of the alternative of the relative of the Powder River base implementation plan. If the simpler execute with the primary advantage, if the less than the initial conversion, more of the continuation of the string experiment with the carried out with the date. Out of date, unbalancing could send a negative signal to the rail community. Likely controlled pneumatic brake technology is not readily ready for the broad implementation. Remain with the further prevention, proven discretion. Setting of the Class 1 volunteers, such somewhat with the running in place relative to the proof of the concept of the electric controlled pneumatic technology has done North American overseas. Bose LMVU for the alternative inferior with the Powder River Basin implementation plan, but in similar represents the electrically controlled pneumatic stagnation. Some of the mixture reasons for the stakeholder of the colon C, against the first alternative. Assuming the single railroad services shows in the inauguration under the alternative heavy haul with the unit type, the service benefit cost should be variable, just as with the first alternative. However, the above absolute standpoint, financial benefit that would be much more smaller given the inherent limitation scope of service converted any of the event with a pre-planned data capture of the rate port would also needed to conduct under the alternative provided the analytical foundation for the future conversion. 4.3 new equipment implementation plan. The third implementation plan approach nor not oriented to discrete rail freight services likely the first or two approaches rather than ensuring the all new equipment coming to the fleet, both the locomotive and the cars. electronically controlled pneumatic capability of the strategy underlying the alternative to establish a sustained rate of the introduction of electrically controlled pneumatic compatible equipment into the fleet without inquiring the cost retrofitting existing equipment and unit conversion is complete. In the alternative, all 5 stakeholders, railroad, private car owners, brake suppliers, FRA, AAR, would need to reach an agreement with the electrically controlled pneumatic conversion schedule for the new equipment. A key decision to be made with the alternative to include pace of the new locomotive conversion, critical determination conversion profit of the alternative because of the rates of the electrically controlled pneumatic locomotive availability to the most important signal factor during level of the electrically controlled pneumatic brake operation due to the relatively free nature of the most locomotive pools, the relatively high level of locomotive utilization, more important than dedicating expensive power and specific trains for quarters. Alternative result of the produced electrically controlled pneumatic converts into reasonable multiple-year two-frame more growth deadline new locomotive electrically controlled pneumatic equipped with the corresponding deadline freight cars may be required. Our standalone version of the overlay version of the kit only conversion of the mix of the new freight car with the wall in one of the 3 categories. Cars with equipped only with electrically controlled pneumatic brake shift that cannot operate with electrically controlled pneumatic locomotives. Cars that are duly equipped to operate with either conventional or electronic controlled pneumatic brake mode, which adds operational flexibility but requires increased installation cost with the maintenance of the 2 brake systems. Cars with the conventional equipment, but also have more electrically controlled pneumatic conversion kit with added with more original equipment. The manufacturing process for the review for the cost of the time required with later full conversion electrically controlled pneumatic technology. Cutover point. The refer to the mandatory timetable with new locomotive equipment will have the electrically controlled pneumatic conversion stand by the such point with the representative of the beginning of the end of the non-electrically controlled pneumatic error. The new equipment will be allowed to industrially without satisfying whatever level of electrically controlled pneumatic requirements are established for it. Comparable to the first 2, strip of the pace on an alternative approach, more flexible. Instead of the industrial itself will determine the pace and strip of the focus with electrically controlled pneumatic conversion locomotive freight car purchases. In order to screw the railroad private the purchase of the freight car with the determine whether the 3 types of the cars which would order depending on the expectation for the use of the electrically controlled pneumatic train conventional trains less expensive from the installation standpoint, but there's no exemption of the need for the retrofitting existing equipment. The focus for the entirely for the new for the parts of the fleet less determinable with the benefit of a cost standpoint, specifically the conversion process for the discrete with the types of the trains, but will be left more to the market force for the decision individual aware of the equipment or providers. Boost the Allen review of the alternative could be standalone approach, but it could also be used with a combination of the first and second implementation plans because of the complementary each of the other. In addition to the timetable conversion and the equipment, the electronically controlled pneumatic program technology should be regarded with a minimum baseline with a serious approach to the electrically controlled pneumatic conversion. As long as new equipment serve the lives measured in the decades allowed to continue to come from the U.S. rail freight industry without becoming electrically controlled pneumatic compatible, at least in terms of core conversion kit. In perspective, the widespread mitigation of electrically controlled pneumatic technology remains fixed and neutral. 5. Conclusions and next steps.